show of hands, who has not been in a meeting where they felt like their time was wasted? Everyone has, right? We all have been in a meeting where we feel like our time was wasted. And, it's very, very easy to judge. It's very, very easy to say, why did they even have that meeting? It should have just been an email. But if we don't take some steps to proactively conduct an effective meeting, our meetings can end up just the same. I've definitely, I try to pride myself if I'm the leader of a meeting in being organized and having a plan, but I've absolutely led a meeting where it completely fell apart. And I reflected on it and said, I think I could have done some things differently. So we decided today to talk about the top 10 tips that we can give for conducting an effective meeting, because we want you all to be superstars in your organizations, in your communities, and be that organization that everyone is like, yeah, my time wasn't wasted. I actually accomplished something. I feel a part of this. And that only helps your engagement, helps your successes. And so when I'm talking about meetings today, you can put this into perspective of your boards. You can put it into perspective for your committees and your teams. You can put it into perspective of your small internal meetings that are called on a whim. It might be a recurring standing meeting that you have as an organizational staff internally again, that you're like, well, it's just our weekly meeting. Of course, we know what the objective is, but my hope is that you can take something away from today, from our top 10 tips to make your meetings that much more effective and people to feel that much better about what they're doing within your organization. So with that, let's go to the first tip. It may come as an obvious, but I think it's so important. And this one is one that I've been really trying to make an effort a lot lately if I'm leading a meeting, if I'm moderating or conducting the meeting, to define the meeting objective. So I mentioned, let's just use an example. Let's say it's your annual gifts committee. And you're like, well, duh, it's our annual gifts committee. We're meeting. Like, that's what we do. But what if you took the time to say, what 1 to 2 to 3 things do I hope to accomplish with this meeting? And I sent it out in the email in advance, or I at least announced it at the beginning of the meeting and said, I know we have a lot of things happening. I know there are multiple areas that we're focused on, but at today's meeting, I want us to all walk away and have one person that we're going to talk to. So we'll do some reports. You have an agenda. There will be some things that we're doing, but if we take nothing away from this meeting, other than this one thing, this is our goal. Does everyone understand? Are we all on board with that? Does anyone have any issues with that? And then we went forward. We're much more likely to actually achieve something in the meeting, right? So I think it's so important to define what that objective is. And I think really, if you try to have more than 2 or 3 objectives, you're just setting yourself up to fail, because unless it's a one-on-one or a 3 people meeting and you have a whole list of things that you need to accomplish and they're quick, actionable items, the reality is most of the groups of people that we work with, 2 to 3 is an absolute top number of objectives to accomplish within one meeting. So make sure that you know what you're setting out to accomplish, you're communicating it with the group, and then you're actually taking steps to build an agenda. Next slide, please, Trish, to build an agenda that are going to help you advance that objective. I was working with an organization one time that spent their board meeting, I would say about 45 minutes of the board meeting was the financial report. And in the financial report, they reported on all of the expenses. They said literally next to nothing about revenues. They focused on the expenses, and then everyone left thinking that's what they were supposed to think about. So they never could get that momentum to focus on generating revenues, because if nobody told them what their objective was, and they spent 75% of their meeting listening to expenses that they actually had nothing to do with, they thought, well, that's what I'm supposed to do, is I'm supposed to go and listen, and then that is what it is. So it's so important to set an agenda, but make sure that the agenda is laid out in a way that it's going to help further your objective. You have time frames to what you're talking about. If we say our objective is to make sure that we all walk out of here with one person to go talk to before our next meeting, we should set the agenda in a way that that's our primary focus. So often we'll put our things at the beginning of the agenda that we think are just our quick little reports and items that we're going to get done. And we never make it to the important thing that we had at the end of an agenda because it wasn't a quick little thing and people thought they were supposed to engage in discussions, and then we didn't set a time frame to it and it just gets derailed and we never even got to the topic of discussing our agenda. So make sure that your priorities are at the beginning of your agenda. You may have some small little things that you're going to address as well, but don't put them before the things that are going to help you accomplish your top objective. So setting an agenda that not only is going to support what you're setting out to achieve in the meeting, setting some timelines to it and sticking with those timelines and engaging others to help you with that are all keys to a successful and effective meeting. The next slide, please. It just lends itself perfectly into there. Assign important roles to as many of your attendees as possible. How many of you have been in a meeting and were like, why was I even there? I have no idea what my role was. Everybody? Have we all been to a meeting where we're like, I have no clue why I was even there? Again, another hour of my day that just gone, right? So if you're inviting people to a meeting, make sure that they have a purpose for being there. And if that purpose is you will provide perspective on, this area of the community, communicate with that to them so they know I have invited you to this meeting for this purpose, and I hope that you can help us in this way. I think I always try to say when you're setting your agenda, put as many names on the agenda as possible. Don't get me wrong, there are meetings where it's a reporting meeting. But again, if you say our objective today is to communicate all the happenings of the last quarter, and I've invited these people to report on that. And so we, as a board, as a committee, we are going to hear some things. We're going to listen to that. We're going to take that information. And at our next meeting, we're going to have some action on it. If that's the purpose of the meeting and we've clearly laid out the objective, people won't feel like their time was wasted if their job is to listen to reports. But if we say your job at the meeting is to go and do something, and then we spent the entire time just reporting and talking at our committee, at our people, and then they just leave, that didn't meet the objective. So we want to make sure that they have an important role for attending. Sometimes that is, hey, will you help us stick to the agenda? We've got a lot to cover today. I've jotted down timelines on, the 5 agenda items. I'd like us to talk 10 minutes on each. Can you be the timekeeper? Can you help keep us on track? Sometimes it is, I'm going to need you to bring forth any feedback you've had from the community. I want you to speak up and tell us some questions you've been asked. By planting important roles to people, whether officially on an agenda or just personally in advance to the meeting, or even announcing it at the meeting, by giving roles and making it an important piece, you're automatically engaging people in the discussion, which automatically makes them feel a part of it and not like their time was wasted. So really think about who's going to be at the meeting, how you can get everyone involved, and give them an important role and tell them, I'm really counting on you for this. And they'll show up as well, right? Next slide, please, Trish. I think this is a big one. Setting ground rules to avoid side discussions and ensure that everyone knows the main objective, right? So if we say, you're going to have a lot of ideas, this is a brainstorming session, I don't want you to develop these ideas. I want you to just throw out the ideas, and then at the next meeting, we'll try to develop them. So if you set those ground rules that this is what we're doing, and then someone goes off on a tangent, you can gently remind them, remember our objective was this. We're just putting out brainstorming ideas right now. We're not further developing these. That helps lead you back to your main objective. It helps get off on it helps you from getting off on tangents. It helps you achieve what you set out to achieve. So whether or not you're saying, here are the ground rules, or you're just sort of doing it through bringing people back to avoid those side discussions. Sometimes we can say, I'm aware of the fact that everyone thinks it'd be a great idea to have a golf tournament this year. Last meeting, we spent a lot of time talking about the golf tournament, but at this meeting, I really want to eliminate any side discussions about that. If we want to set up a special meeting just to talk about a golf tournament, we can do that. But today we're here to talk about X. That's a helpful, proactive way to sort of set those ground rules to make sure that you're headed in that right direction still. Okay, next slide, please. I like this one a lot too. Encourage participation and create a culture of trust where everyone feels safe to speak. How many times have you been in a meeting and you thought you had a good idea and it was just immediately shot down? And they're like, no. And so how likely are you in a meeting with that group of people to speak up again if you're just shot down, right? That trust was just immediately pulled from you. There's a way to be able to say, wow, that's a great idea. Let's talk about that another time if it doesn't fit with the appropriateness of the meeting. But I think encouraging participation and encouraging people to speak up and to have that voice is so important. And again, to the point, if you have a large group of people and your objective is to engage them in something and to have them leave with an actionable item, it's important to do things like a roundtable, right? To say, okay, so I want everyone to have a chance to speak, but there's a big group, so everyone's going to get 1 minute. And then to go around and physically say, okay, Jim, what are your thoughts on this? Jared, Jen, to have that roundtable is a helpful way to encourage participation. There's nothing more uncomfortable than feeling like, okay, there's that one person that was in the room and I read their body language. They never got a chance to speak up. And I missed that opportunity. Now they feel, they've all of a sudden started going like this. They're looking out the window, they're checking their phone. I did not do a good job of encouraging them to participate. And we've all had it. There are meetings we're at where someone, is very vocal and speaks up, or it depends on people's moods. But as facilitators of a meeting, it is our job to encourage that participation and have everyone feel that they do have that it's safe for them to speak up and say something. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Shauna to tell us the next tips that we've got. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Marty. I appreciate it. So wonderful. Marty actually falls into one of my top 10, the ones that I'm assigned later in our time together. So number 6, just transitioning right into it, keep things interesting. I think we have the ability as nonprofits, right, to focus on this and to make sure that we are centering ourselves in why we're ultimately having the meeting, which is the mission, right? So I really like to start meetings or end meetings, depending on what's appropriate, with what we call mission moments, to just center people, especially if you're having a tense meeting or you're having a meeting where hard decisions are going to be made, or you're celebrating something. You always should take the time to highlight, and it can be quick, but highlight why you're doing what you're doing. Why are you there? Tell a story about someone that was helped. Tell a story about how a donation helped someone, just really quick, and have that prepped and ready for your meetings, especially whenever you're meeting with volunteers. It's a great way to just catch their attention, help them and you focus on why we're all here, right? So keep it interesting. We do not want to just sit there and listen to people talk about expenses, right? No one wants to do that. And what happens when no one wants to do what we're doing in meetings? They stop coming to meetings. So if we actually need them there, let's make sure that we are giving them a reason to be there, which oftentimes draws back to our missions. Next slide, please, Trish. A big one, ask for feedback and what? Listen, right? So important, gets missed so easily. We talk in meetings. We don't ask for people's input, especially since I personally think Zoom virtual meetings make it a little easier and a little more, a little easier to avoid, and also scary whenever you open it up. It's a little different than whenever you're in a boardroom with each other or something of that sort, and people feel more comfortable talking, or you can, you know, with eye contact, let them know that you want them to have input. When you do it on Zoom, it can be crickets, right? Jeremy Robbins is the best at this. He never lets us have crickets. Like, he always has something to say and doesn't let us just sit there. No pressure, Jeremy. So later, make sure that you've got something to say. But it's always important to listen to what is said. Don't just listen to respond. Make sure that you're hearing what people's input is. And also, I've done this multiple times, but if you have something that you need to be discussed, or you have something that needs to be said, utilize plants within that meeting. Say, hey, Jen, like, we really could use somebody bringing up this topic, or if you could just give your 2 cents on this, please do. We're going to talk about it in the meeting. I don't want it to just be me. We need to be really good at managing meetings. And that includes utilizing people. Just like Marty said earlier, you might have a role for them that is a plant, right? It's not sneaky. It's kind of sneaky, but it's not sneaky in a bad way. All right, next slide, please, Trish. Okay, this is my Marty slide. Create a pleasant ambiance. Since we all can't have Marty in all of our meetings where she just naturally makes it flow so well, some tips as to how we can do our best to be Martys. Be positive. Always be positive, okay? Even if it's bad news, even if it's a hard meeting, just be positive, be encouraging, and be present. Be present with the people that are there with you, and make it apparent to everyone in that meeting that you think that the meeting is needed. If it's your meeting, you better believe it better be needed. And if it doesn't, please cancel it. So make sure that people understand, make sure that you're positive, make sure that you are setting the tone for what that work is going to look like. And do your work ahead of time. Pleasant ambiance, do your work ahead of time to make sure that you're set up correctly. So that you're not scrambling, because that makes it really hard for you to be positive, right? If you're stressed to the max because your Zoom didn't work out, or, like, you can't get signed in, or your computer restarts last second, it's really hard to circle back and be positive and not stressed out in the first few minutes of those meetings. So just think through that, taking a few extra seconds to just be prepared ahead of time. All right, next slide, please, Trish. Oh, I was like, what is the slide? Okay, start on time and end on time. A big one, right? How many meetings? I love that Marty keeps saying this. How many meetings have we been in where we do this? Where we sit in a meeting and we're thinking ahead, oh my Lanta, I've got to get to this next meeting. And especially those of us who are working in the corporate world, and we've got to think about how long it takes us to get to our next meeting. Or, if we need to make stops along the way, or whatever that looks like, make sure that you are able to hold the meeting in the amount of time that you schedule. And I've got to tell you, if you can't hold it within the amount of time, which is usually an hour, and we would recommend that you follow the trend that is happening now, which is 50-minute meetings, which allows for that 10-minute space to gather your thoughts, to use the restroom, to get more coffee, whatever it is. If you can't accomplish a meeting in 50 minutes, you probably need to reevaluate what it is that you're talking about. Attention span just isn't going to be much longer than that. And now, I am not advocating that you never have meetings that are longer than that. But if you do have something that is going to take up a significant amount of time, be honest. Hey guys, this meeting, we're going to talk through this subject. We need for everybody to be present. It's probably going to take a big chunk of time, but instead of us breaking it out into 4 different meetings, we're going to just try to do it all within this one space, which is going to be 2.5 hours. We need you to be here. We're asking you to be here, be present. Let's get it done. Let's knock it out. Otherwise, let's keep it to 50 minutes, right? So we suggest that you would keep your meetings to 50 minutes. Allow for people to just have a second to come down at the end of it and think about what their next steps are. Don't have, because and honestly, in all reality, if you have an hour-long meeting, the last 10 minutes, you lose them anyway, because they're focused on the next meeting that they have to get to, or what is happening in the next time slot that they have. So be diligent. Do your homework before you start a meeting as to what all of our other tips are, what you want the outcomes to be, and can you get it done, and how do you get it done in time? And a lot of times that you need to start on time, and you need to not let side conversations happen. You need to, all of these things work together to make sure that we have a successful meeting, right? So again, we would suggest that you just make sure that you are giving them time to really regroup following. Okay, and then our last tip of the day, a big one. This is such a big one. Leave with clear action items, owners, and timelines. If you've been in meetings with me, you know that I usually like to wrap up with, okay, so you said you were going to do this. I know I promised this to you. When do we want to recap? How do we want to get this back to each other? What's that look like? Because, and selfishly, it's not because I'm a good meeting holder. It's because I have to hold myself accountable. I have to be able to say, okay, I promised this stuff. I know you promised this stuff. I want to make sure that there is no way we miscommunicated and you think that I'm doing that when I think that you're doing that. And ooh, see, we set this up perfectly. Number 9 sets us up perfectly into number 10, because if you have done your due diligence and given them a little bit of time at the end, you've given yourself a little bit of time at the end to send just a quick email or a text. I do text a lot too, that says, hey, we just talked about this. I know I said it. You're going to do this. I'm going to do this. We need to call so-and-so by the next meeting. Just wanted to recap and put it in text because that helps me remember things. You can always blame it on yourself, especially if you have a volunteer who you know that you're calling them out. You know you're calling them out because they will forget or they will not do it or whatever it is. Just blame it on yourself. Say, I need help remembering this. So I am giving you 45 reminders as to what we need to do. And by having that last 10 minutes, it really sets you up to be able to do that. Recaps are golden. If we have a meeting and it's an amazing meeting and we've done all these 10 things and we do not have assignments, or there was not a reason for the meeting, why did we have the meeting? Like, why did we have the meeting if we are not going to come out of that time together with, I know what's expected of me. I know what the next step is. And sometimes it is just talking through things, but if that's what it is, we can still recap, right? Circle back at the end of the meeting. So what does that look like? Marty, you said you were going to do this. Is there anything that you need from me that that I can help with that? Do you need me to open a door? Is there, something that I could be doing to help support you within that space? Or whoever it is, I need this from you. Actually, it turns out I need this address. Could you help send that to me? I didn't think about it in the meeting, but could you help send that to me? And keeping in communication with people to make sure, because we've also all walked into a meeting where we were supposed to do things and we didn't do them, or we know that our volunteers didn't do them. So keeping that communication is helpful. It also gives you a reference point. So if you send out something that says, just a recap, I said I was going to do this. You said you were going to do that. We both need help with these pieces. I can pull that up before my next meeting and say, okay, these are, yep, I did all my things. I hope that they did their things. So we hope that through this, through these top 10, that this helps you to be more productive. It helps the people that you are with to be more productive, because what is the one resource that we cannot replace and we cannot get back? It is our time. and we spend a whole boatload of time at work. And I would challenge you also to use this in your personal lives. If you're having a meeting, or if you do family meetings, or you do, personal meetings, I am that annoying person who also likes to accomplish things with my friends. Like, make sure that you are accomplishing what you need to accomplish. And sometimes that can just be to rest. It can be, but make sure that you are utilizing these 10 tips. And I know that I'm going to turn it back over to Marty in a second, because she gets to wrap up with that really great ambiance that she brings to the meeting. Just through that accent alone, but also her just character and the way she handles things, but also will, I'm sure, be asking for questions. So, no pressure, Jeremy.
Thank you, Shauna. Well, I do hope everyone got something. Does anyone want to share like a little light bulb that went off in their head that they're like, wow, that's so simple, but I don't do that? And I mean, again, when we were preparing this, there were some nuggets. I was like, holy cow, I need to start implementing this better and more. Did anyone have one of those that they want to share with everyone else? Thanks, Jeremy.
I was going to give some wait time as an educator. That's important. People are thinking and processing. I don't mind the awkward moment. For me, it was thinking about, I'd love to have a mnemonic or something that I can keep these 10 items, in mind, both in planning and then going through the meeting. But I also think I'm going to take these as a rubric for like a survey I can share out with my team, just for folks to give, just say, hey, if you want to give some feedback on that meeting, how did we do according to these 10 criteria? And I mean, most cases, people might only be motivated to do it like, man, that was a terrible meeting. I want to let Jeremy know. But also, I think we do have a culture where folks do take the time to do some acknowledgement, and in particular, if they want to give a shout out to a colleague. So I could see just having this as part of our organizational culture of a fairly objective way to give some feedback on a meeting and for continuous improvement.
Yeah, I love it. I can like actually picture almost assigning each person one of them and saying, okay, what was the objective? did you hear that loud and clear? What was, I think you can do a lot of fun things with it. So great idea, Jeremy. Does anyone else have anything to add? Again, not to put people on the spot, but just always fun if we have a few minutes at the end, either questions or comments from the rest of the room.